class or a conference the class starting time of 1 o'clock, probably waiting until maybe 1:15 to make sure everybody logs on. Hopefully we don't have the problems we have now. While you're logged on, there will be a quiz the first half hour of the course. The quiz will be available for 1 until 1:30. It used to be 1:15, but I'm going to go back and change that after what's happened. The quizzes are extremely important. They deal with mostly some of the theory and not problem solving. For instance, the first quiz Thursday, even if you cannot make contact with me in the conference chat, go to quizzes and it will open immediately at 1 o'clock and close at about 1:30, and take that quiz. The quiz sometimes refers to information that can be found in the course outline. And if you press whatever file I have in blue, it will take you immediately to that file or one of its subdivisions so that you can research your answer. Then, of course, you might want to write your answers down on a sheet of paper in case communication is lost, because I do not mind if you take a picture of your answers and send them by photo or PDF file on your phone, to my phone or to my email. It doesn't make any difference. The reason the quizzes are so important, even if we can't get to conference chat, you can at least do the quizzes, is because the final exam is worth 50 points, and it deals with 10 free response questions that relate to the quizzes. Most of the final exam answers are fairly straightforward, coming right out of the quizzes. So you want to begin to build a notebook that contains all of the course's quizzes so that you can study for that material for the final exam worth 50 points. Interesting enough, the quizzes are also worth, in total, 50 points. The regular chapter test will take care of problem solving. No free response on the 4 chapter tests. They're all multiple choice. Right now I'm looking at Cengage to see if I can download those through Canvas. We've been working on that, though, for the last 3 months. And if not, I'm looking at the testing center where we could find a safe, under the conditions of coronavirus, where you could go and take the exam very near the course times on Tuesday and Thursday. Right now, I'm trying to find out how late the evaluation center stays open. And I don't think they stay open through 9 o'clock. I think it's something in the morning all the way to 8 p.m. But most of my chapter tests are only designed for 2 hours. Any other time is just trying to log in, log off, etc. For that reason, signing on Tuesday and Thursday, even if you can't get to chat, is to take a quiz. And that establishes your online attendance. I can't prevent you from logging off after you take the quiz. There are, I think there are 25 days of lessons on Tuesday and Thursday. There's 4 tests, which gets us down to about 20 or 19 quizzes. There's no quiz for today. And that will keep attendance for the required course dates. I will never know if you sign out after quiz. It depends on your individual background, whether or not you want to stay for some of the responses, some of the PowerPoint reviews, If you wanted to know how I would deal with the content of the class that afternoon, look at the PowerPoints generated by CD, which would be those that I generated decades ago. Actually, when I was using the same book in the 6th edition. They're primitive and static compared to PowerPoints of the day. But I also have included the text PowerPoints, which are really pretty. But again, they're also static. And they deal mostly with application of equations, a lot less of what equations should be used and how. With that in mind, let's see. Someone said to switch to Firefox. All right, I am using Firefox, but the college also says Chrome may be also a better way to go. However, Eric, you said your Chrome was not working, nor is the microphone, so I'm a little confused with that. But whatever will go.
In a perfect world, it'd work on both, but there's different variables sometimes.
Okay, thank you. I hope that's Eric. If not, whoever it was, thank you very much. Is there any other, while my son's phone is working, better than mine, but a little echo from everybody's talk, and my phone didn't have the echo, but are there any other pending questions that I have not covered, or have covered when you were on the microphone? Yes, ma'am.
I'm trying to buy the textbook right now, and I'm just going to go ahead and purchase it used.
Okay.
Because it's faster for me to get it if I purchase it used than if I were to try and rent it, especially from the bookstore. How soon do we need to have the textbook? Because the earliest I can get it is June 1st.
Oh my gosh. Ew. Well, I tell you, with my PowerPoint, the only problem is getting your homework done. Let me see if I tell you, if you will send me an email, and you said June, late June 6th, so about a week or a week and a half after class.
When it says it can be delivered the 1st.
Okay. What I could do if you send me an email even today is I could look at the chapter homework that's covered and give you the review outline of the chapters, and then you could use maybe the PowerPoint to find out.
I can use the PowerPoints to do what?
So close.
Ashley, if you need, I could send you pictures. If you give me your email, I could honestly just send you pictures of my textbook, at the best that I can, so that you can try at least to read through them.
Okay, yeah, I'll still buy the book. This way I don't have to bug you all semester, but...
well, until you get it, at least you'll have the first chapter.
I literally cannot thank you enough. I'm going to put my email in the chat in case anybody else needs to. I already took this class just without calculus last semester, so anybody needs to contact me, I'm available too.
Yep. If I could get the questions too, because I also don't have the book.
I'll put my email down, and if anyone needs pictures of the first chapter, you guys can just email me, and I'll send y'all.
I wonder if we should make a group chat. Just upload photos of the textbook to there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if we can figure that out, that'd probably be best because that just streamlines it so we don't have to go back and forth with everyone.
To be honest, I used to work for the college, be wary of putting stuff that has trademarks or anything like that on an FSCJ related account, because if they can track that back, that can get you in trouble with the school. It'd be better to do it off of something like GroupMe, where you can, or some type of group app or a group text messaging thing, This way it's not traceable back to your student information.
Gotcha.
Okay. My phone again went dead, and I think I realized what is happening. It showed out of range, and I've been sitting in one place the whole time. So I do have a weak Wi-Fi connection. Although on my cell phone, my son's phone, I have 4 bars, so that doesn't make any sense. I think I was talking to Jessica about your book.
Me about my book. Thank you, Ashley.
Yeah. Ashley. There's another person that won't get their book until the 1st also. The best thing
I just told everyone that I have the book. I'm going to scan pictures of the first chapter, and I'm going to make a discussion, like a student discussion in our course, and I'm just going to post all the pictures there. So if anyone needs the first chapter, they can just see the pictures.
Okay. Is it possible that you could take a picture of the summary at the end of chapters 1 and 2, let's say?
Yeah, I can upload pictures of 1 and 2. They're going to be pictures, like hopefully, like they'll be, like you can read them. It'll just, you got to probably zoom in and stuff to see it. But I'll post stuff,
I got you. I won't discuss it anymore, but as a class, the copyright will allow us to copy up to 35 pages with impunity if you would keep that in mind. Okay, yes. And I think under the circumstances, I think I just figured out when it told me I was out of range that I'm having Wi-Fi connection. So I feel a little bit better about it. Last week when there was no rain, I did this. I went to the big blue button to see how I could coordinate some of my PowerPoints, and it's not working. But my phone is working fine, and I'm reading your messages. So, yeah. Physics. Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yes. Oh, absolutely. I have them not only in the assignments listed, but I also have them embedded in the calendar. The calendar is the key to this course. And then when you get to assignments, it will tell you how many problems and the total points of that problem set. If you'd like, I can also list the problems in the assignment, but it's better to, if you have it in the calendar, which you see the due date and everything. Oh, absolutely. The main thing is the quizzes will open at 1 and close at 1, and there's no way of making that up. But I will consult her with respect to the steps she may want to go through, and she's got a whole class that she can contact and find out what she missed. Since it is okay. Well, the latest discussion with the faculty that is trying to do this all online is due to the nature of the internet traffic. I have a place where it says start recording. I can start recording, but we're not promised that they will record past 60 minutes. Which means when I get really serious about the presentations, I may subdivide the class up into 3 50-minute periods, which is fair because the state of Florida gives me a 10-minute break for every 15 minutes that I'm teaching. So technically I need to break it off in less than 60 minutes, give everybody a break, and then we can try recording again and 60-minute intervals, but they do not guarantee that it will work. And after today's experience, I can understand why. Of course, it was raining very heavily here in Arlington. It's slacking off, and I think that's why my phone communication is better. Now I just got to get my the Canvas conference right, which I was doing last week, so that doesn't make a whole lot of sense either, except it wasn't raining last week. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Now, will you do that or I do that? Actually, after this experience today, and they have not promised that any of our lessons will be recorded. It depends on internet traffic. And with my experience with them, I don't trust them, to be frank with you. I'll tell you, if you'll send me an email, I think if you don't mind, let's talk, well, let's exchange emails over it if you don't mind. Yes, I would appreciate that. Wow. Huh.
Oh,
Her
hey guys,
email is listed in the calendar.
you can find every faculty member's email online. You can go to the faculty search and you can go down to the email link. And even if you don't have an email link, if you scroll over it, you can see that it just shows the email address. It's just converted to hexadecimal. So you go to inspectors. Here, I'll walk you through it.
Gentlemen.
It's on the home
Okay.
tab. Her email's on the home tab.
There you go. My email is on the home file under how your homework should be sent. Now, having been a full-time, now retired, it might get confusing. So make sure that the new email, which is lowercase c Dewberry at fscj.edu is used. There was 2 or 3 emails associated with my name because of my history at the college. And if you go to the home page, it will give you email that's currently being recognized. And then you can always send it to my Gmail, or you can send by text through my phone number. So there's multiple ways of getting information to me. All of them, yeah, all of them last semester when we taught online totally worked very well. A lot of what you see in your class has been working last semester. Whew, okay. I have lost 2, but of the 22 left, are there any questions?
I just wanted to clarify, did you say that when we were doing our quizzes, we could go to certain things and look up the answers?
Yes. Now, one problem we had is sometimes the student gets disconnected from the quiz. That's why I recommend that as you're taking the quiz, just say, all right, there are 3 questions. I'll put number 1 on my page, number 2 on a page, and number 3. remember what the questions were. There's not more than 3. And then if there is a link, go to the links. And a lot of times the answer is in the content of the lesson prior to the quiz. In other words, if you're taking a quiz Thursday, it refers back to a lesson on Tuesday. It's not all over the place. In other words, your quiz Thursday will refer to this conference. And I haven't even covered the 2 topics yet. What I'm getting ready to do is kind of talk you through the home page. And if any of you have a question about any of the content, while I am discussing the content, I will be including the answers to those 2 quiz questions, as a matter of fact, providing I'm not cut off, but it looks like I got a strong signal now. If all of you would like to go to the home page and find at the top student information page, I think. I hope everybody's saying, hello? Yes?
We can hear you.
Okay, has everyone found the home page? Actually, you don't
Yeah.
really have to see. Yeah, I'm going to talk about what's on there. It may not be in the same order. The top item is the student information page. If you will get a copy of that, it is not a live file, so you'll have to give answers on maybe a sheet of notebook paper and send it by attachment to, say, the college's email address. The second item is grade determination. Please note there are 4 chapter tests, each valued at 100 points. The design of the test is such that it could be completed in about 2 hours. If connections are bad and we have to do it online, maybe 2.5 hours. But considering today's connections, I do not plan anything else during that particular class period, which literally means you have from 1 o'clock until 4:20 to complete the test. I know that you will have access to reference material, but these 4 tests are written so that you must be able to learn how to use your resources, and they are your textbook, the PowerPoint presentation, the sample problems in the PowerPoint, any other reference material that you can find. I do know that in the physics resources there is access to Khan Academy, but the selections on my multiple choice are anywhere from 5 to 8 selections. Why taking it? You will be provided an answer sheet, and you're to place the letter of your answer next to the problem or question number. And just so that I can interpret your letter, make sure. And if you want to use a word such as my answer to number 1 is A, comma, apple. I know then that it means to be apple. This procedure only will be utilized if we must test solely online. In the sciences and in mathematics, we find there's a problem with that because there are designs, diagrams that have to be on the test. So the Student Testing Center is working out locations that will be the spacing of students adequately. We're working on that now. However, last semester it was not successful. Perhaps it will be. I'll keep you posted. For those of you that are curious, all 4 tests are already made out. So is the final exam, which means the selected quizzes and the selected homework problems are directly related to testing. This is a consideration of the online nature of the course, which I admit is not the best way of learning. Then, of course, the final exam is worth 50 points. The quiz is 50. And anybody remember what I said about the final exam and quizzes? Oh, hello? Yes, they are intricately related. So keep a file of your quizzes. It will be different. I don't know if any of you know about the dot product, but the quiz may be a three-dimensional vector dotted into another three-dimensional vector. But for the final exam, all I have to do is change the coefficients, and it would be a different answer. I hope everybody realizes that the final exam will not be verbatim of quizzes. It will be just technique, facts, and some of the concepts, and do you know certain things. Homework is worth 130 points. If you count up the number of homework problems, that is not the number of homework problems. I counted them up, and I think it was something like, well, it didn't make a difference to me. It's the homework that I picked as important. There are not every homework problem is worth 1 point. Some of them may have 5 parts. Some of them may have 1 part but require a further discussion or diagram. There are over 260 points of homework. I think there's only about 100 homework questions, 120 somewhere along in there. Less than that. I take the total number of homework points that you have accrued, and I divide by 2. If somebody has perfect homework, you'll probably get more than 130, but it's truncated to 130 points. The last item are labs. Due to the online nature of the labs, the 7 labs, which is mandated by the state of Florida, they're only worth 10 points, and they are not lab reports. They are analyzing the data that you collected. And some of those online labs, if I had 100 students, every one of you will have slightly different data. Then I have a list of how to turn in various, well, the first document is how should your homework be arranged. Certainly neat, on 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, legible. You should have 3 steps for problems, have the equation, fill in with your set of data, justify your answer. At this level of physics, you will probably need more than 3 steps to problems. In fact, sometimes you have more than 1 equation has to be used to get to the answer. Rarely will you have more than 3 equations. Usually it's 2. Some of the blue problems in the text requires as many as 3. It just takes too long on a test if you have 3 equations that have to be worked together. So test, or can you apply what you're supposed to know? Then notice I have a list of how you can get online information to me, and it will give you, if it's homework, it's due by midnight the day that it's, which means if you're here to take your quiz on conference, and if you have a question about something in the homework, we can manage it at that time. Hopefully all 24 students won't have a different question. I hope you understand that. Some people may have sent me emails before that. After the how to turn in things is a physics resources, and it's a 2-page document that talks about some of the internet help you might get. Previously I had mentioned Khan Academy, which a number of my students have used. They are particularly pleased with some of the information about circular motion, rotation, which if you notice carefully in looking at my test coverage, that test only covers 3 chapters, 9, 10, and 11, due to the challenging aspects of torque and rotation. After that is a list of the answers to all of the even problems that I assigned in the 15-week course, but I then diminished the homework by about 20% because we only have 12 weeks out of 15. But it will include all of the answers to even problems because your book does not give you those answers. So you will have a resource to go to find out if your homework answer is correct. Obviously, I'm not grading homework as to whether or not the answer is correct. I am looking for your solution style. Is it logical, or did you just guess? So I do spend time looking over your homework. After the answers to all of chapters 1 through 15 problems, I don't think I've missed any problem, but if you can't find a problem, just send me a quick email and I'll give you an answer to it. I think then the assignment is the next lesson outline says go to the calendar. After that, I believe there's a PowerPoint, and I believe there's at least one for each chapter except I think there is a text reference to every chapter, and I have a lesson for everything but chapter 13, I believe, and chapter 4, and the college has lost those PowerPoints. However, the text PowerPoints in chapter 4 is well done, and 13 I only cover the gravitational aspects, not Kepler's laws. The state of Florida does not require that this engineering course go over Kepler's laws. Interesting reading, but they're not included. At the very bottom, unless I've skipped something, you'll find the online labs by hashtag 1 through 7. And they all came out of the physics arborarium. Every one of those labs has a similar aspect to a lab that we actually do face-to-face at South Campus of FSCJ. Some of those labs I even wrote. At the present time, I do not have the online labs coordinated to a lab that might be face-to-face for reference, but I plan to include it in case you want to read through the face-to-face lab to get the idea of the theory behind what they're doing in the online. Unfortunately, the online labs does not discuss the theory. So I try to coordinate it with a chapter in your text to a lesser or greater degree. But the face-to-face labs talks about theory and is related to the online lab. So you may want to read through it for what you can get with respect to theory. I have selected labs that in some way or another would also relate to a number of ideas that are embedded in test 1 through 4. So it's advisable to do the labs when due. To learn from it gives you an idea as to how to answer questions on the quizzes, as well as put together some facts while working problems. Now that ought to tell you something about my test questions and problems. Verbatim out of homework. I may have combined 2 homework problems. I may have put a question that can be found somewhere in the text, a negative, or maybe even to reaffirm some facts. So let me remind you that if we test online, you have access to that material, but it is a timed test. You must complete it on time. You'll have 10 minutes to submit the answer sheet. You have any work you want me to see, you can send it certainly after you submit the answer sheet. So you have a little more time to get me partial credit. The tests are not designed necessarily for partial credit. If any of you know students that have had my courses before, you know that I'm amenable to a curve. Unfortunately, if somebody aces the test, there'll be no curve. My maximum curve is 10 points. That will change your letter grade. I have had tests where there was no curve. I've had tests that after the curve, the highest grade in the 80s, which ought to tell you something about my tests. They're challenging, but if you have done your homework, and incidentally, let me remind you that you only sent me a copy of your homework. You have the original. That brings to mind a question. But Mrs. Dewberry, if I've missed a homework problem, well, I'm going to be grading it. And I will tell you the problem, send you an email or a message saying you need to relook at certain problem, and let me give you a hint. I found when I did that last semester, of course it was the middle of the semester that we went to totally online, that there's not a whole lot I have to tell the students because you have the answers and you know you'll work toward getting the right answer. If you have a homework problem that you just can't seem to get it, set it up, leave room, because you may want to go back and fill it in. And as soon as I get to the question and it's blank, I know to give you hints to get it started. I won't give you a solution, but hints to get it started. Okay. With that, I think that's the bottom of the homepage. You may want to go through the assignments and other moduli, I guess. You might even see the first quiz. It will not let you open it now because it's timed. The other important document is at the bottom of general information, and I wanted to mention it last. It says, is unit conversion important? Anybody got an answer to that? Yeah, I'm getting cutouts too now. I'm getting pretty good communication Wi-Fi. Does anyone know why unit conversion is important?
Ma'am, we still haven't, or at least I'm having difficulty hearing you.
I know. Yes, I ask that as a group. I sometimes ask kind of rhetorical questions. I don't expect the right answer. Sometimes I'm glad if I get the wrong answer.
Unit conversions can be extremely useful because if you needed to convert something from like newtons, but you also have joules being intervened and everything like that, you can use different equations depending on how you're able to substitute things.
That's a good, substitution. I would encourage you to read that last document in general information, which says, is unit conversion important? There are two examples. It comes from a very old text by Van Heuvelin, who passed away about 40 years ago. He was out of the University of Arizona. You will find an example of a Boeing 767 or something, a film out of it, and it was about an airplane that lost all its fuel or had used up its fuel a quarter of the way to Europe. The other example is a Mars lander that crashed on the surface, and old enough to have remembered that. It was about a $25 million landing that went wrong. Please find out what unit conversion was wrong. Find out what happened to unit conversion in both of those examples, or just pick one for that matter. And it will illustrate the importance of unit conversion. At this point, are there any other questions? Let me review. Okay, thank you. Homework is found in the textbook and the quiz is on campus. You're absolutely right. Okay, you answered that. Thank you for answering that. I appreciate that, John Hartwell. Yeah. Okay, didn't see what we were doing. Can you add me to? Okay, I think that's a phone number. I'll go back to that as we get offline. Chapter 1 picks on the group. Okay, thank you. Oh, I think that I may have covered everything. Let
Would
me
it be
back
all
up a
right
little
if I
bit.
ask a question to the class real quick?
Sure.
All right.
Go ahead.
Hey, everybody. It's me again. Sorry for being so annoying. Was everybody able to get the link for GroupMe? Is everybody able to access that now?
Actually,
Yes, ma'am.
I would elect to not join the group so that the group can be very honest with one another, if you don't mind.
Okay.
I believe students should have the right to privacy. I should more honest with one another. I hope you understand.
Yes, ma'am.
Good. And then while you're in the group, if you have a question, somebody can contact me. And just don't tell me that you're in the group. I'll answer it. Sounds like a good idea.
So in the group, I posted the pictures of chapter 1, like from start to finish with all the problems. So they should be available to whoever did join the group so far. Hopefully you guys can read everything clearly.
Okay, yeah. Generally, if you can, they say if you can read 3 or 4 letters of a word, you can generally make it out at our level of learning and understanding. Okay. Okay, yeah. Oh, yeah, I think I've answered every question. I've gone all the way back to about 1:30, and most people are just having trouble hearing, but later on they can hear. So I think we might have addressed. If anyone still has any questions, I'm thinking that unless you have any other questions, I think we ought to just call it a day for conference, and I don't mind ending any conference as long as we have no questions. If you still have questions and want to just contact me privately, feel free to send me an email. However, if the conference lasts, if any conference lasts until 4:20, I do have a Physics 2 with calculus and lab starting at 5:30. And so I must take that time to have some supper. And of course, their class ends at 8:50. So the best thing to do is, instead of waiting for the conference to end that late, now if the conference ends early and you want to stay on, albeit by phone, I'll be glad to answer any questions. Other than that, I don't mind people checking out. I'm going to sit here until 4:20. I might see if I can figure out. Now I've got no rain happening. Excuse me.
Would you mind going over chapter 1?
Chapter 1?
Yeah, just...
all right. Either use the text, chapter 1, which has too much in it. First of all, your text survey says that all of the numbers are to 3 significant figures. Not all of the problems have 3, like 3.00. They tell you in the introduction to the student that if you have 3 meters in a problem, they mean 3.00.
Okay.
So their discussion of significant figures is, everything is, except one concept, and that is atmospheric pressure. Atmospheric pressure must be the 4 significant, because the slight difference in the 4 significant figure is one of the things that helps us breathe. the 1.013 times 10 to the fifth pascals is required. So just keep that in mind. Now, all my tests, and even in homework and quizzes, all I look at is two figures, too significant if you want to call them. Because depending on whether or not you round up or down, if the number is even or odd, I want to be able to at least agree to the first two digits. Let's put it like that. That's why I want to see your work and not the answer. In fact, if you have a homework answer that's off by the third numeral, don't panic. The answers are going to be that way because of rounding up or down or your technique for rounding up or down. One of those things they discuss is the definition of time, length, mass. That is interesting reading, but I'm not interested in the standard 1 kilogram uridium platinum cylinder that's located in about 13 capitals of the world, and the Department of Measurement in Paris, France, at the Institute of the Seine. I've been there. In fact, I was there and they didn't even have to lift it because the humidity was too much, so not a problem with that. Interesting reading. What I am interested in is unit conversion. Now, chapter 1 in your book uses capital L for length, capital T for time, and capital M for math, I believe, something like that. No, and then they start analyzing units using those letters. I do not like that technique because everyone taking this course must have taken at least General Physics, PHY 23D, as recommended by the course description, or have completed a high school physics class, AP or not, doesn't make any difference, or some kind of physics class where they would have encountered the 3 fundamental units that we will be studying in this semester. Although there are 7 fundamental units, in classical Newtonian mechanics, we only study 3, and that is length, mass, and time. When you go into my PowerPoint presentation, you will find a review of those 3 units, both in the metric system with meter, kilogram, second, but also in the CGS metric system, which is centimeters, grams, second. Usually in the laboratory, and this is not true for online labs, the CGS system is used. Online labs will generally use the meter, kilogram, second. Some, however, go to the liter when they're talking about meters cubed, and of course a liter is 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters, which is a tenth of each. Those of you that have had chemistry, and I know some of you are interested in biomedical or medical field. Unit conversion, very important. In fact, the example in my PowerPoint is you're driving along at, let's see, how about 60 miles an hour? Does anyone have any idea how many meters per second that is? Because your book only does metrics. 60 miles an hour. How many meters per second? Well, read my PowerPoint and you'll find that to one significant figure, the rule of thumb is to take 1/2 of the miles per hour. Now, we're talking about velocities that would be velocity of a car, for instance. I'm not talking about a snail's pace or a jet airplane. I'm talking about what engineers would encounter. 60 miles per hour is roughly 30 meters per second. How about 100 miles per hour? Anybody have any idea about how many meters per second that would be? Using what as a rule of thumb?
50.
You got it. Hallelujah. We're communicating. At least review that because it gives you some idea problems with multiple choice answers, whether or not the answer is logical. And for engineers, a lot of looking at the data and asking yourself, is it logical, is more important than doing all the steps. Remember, the great majority of you will be designating yourself as engineer majors. A few biomedical, that's also biomedical engineering, a couple of MDs. That's why I am very much interested in the student information page. I need to look at where your major would be, what academic goals you have. Because sometimes when we have these discussions like I'm having now, I can help direct your thinking as to how you might need to use them in your field of study. Okay, the rest of Chapter 1, they talk about powers of 10. I'm not interested in you estimating powers of 10. Engineers can get in trouble if you're off by a factor of 10. It's like saying, well, I have $5, that's a power 1, to 50, that's in between 1 and 2, or 100. I think I would want the 100, which is a power of 10 too. Big difference compared to $5. I think some of the chemists also talk to you about using the power of 10 because it can get a little bit difficult. Let's see, anything else in Chapter 1? Other than conversion of units, that is the major concept right there. Any other questions about Chapter 1? Hello?
No, I'm here.
Okay, you can still hear me good. Okay, a lot of people said yes, 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 yes. Thank you, thank you. about 271 times. I like that. Okay.
Actually,
All right.
you said that only the length, time, and mass units were understood or gone over in physics. What other units would there be?
Well, actually, there are 7 fundamental units. And I'll just add this. I've been thinking about adding it because in Physics 2 with calculus, we will get into the ampere, which is a fundamental unit of current. Believe it or not, charge is not. Then the old-fashioned measurement of light intensity, which is candela, has been replaced by watts per meter squared. And your book does that conversion. I don't even think they mention candela anymore.
Wait,
so that makes it...
resistance?
No, illumination of light. And light intensity.
Oh.
A watt per meter squared. We're not studying that, though. I'm talking about 4 units that we don't study in classical and quantum mechanics.
And the other one is because it has to do with the number of electrons, which is its own thing, right?
Pardon?
I said charge is like voltage is like the amount of energy per electron or per coulomb of a, not per coulomb, per
Best to do is wait until you get into Physics 2 so you won't confuse others that are listening to you. If you want to discuss the difference between a charge, which is a coulomb, and an ampere, please call me back in a later time. I will be glad to discuss it.
I just want to 4 units that are not being presented.
Yeah.
I don't know that.
No. Beyond the scope of what you need to know. But somebody asked me about the other units, so let me move on. In fact, my first lecture will involve the relationship between charge and current in the Physics 2 class tonight, as a matter of fact. The other 2 units, we're up to 5 now, will be the mole, and the chemists know that that's the gram molecular weight and how many you have. And the last measurement is a Kelvin temperature. We do not get into thermodynamics. The state of Florida mandates that as a special topic or an elective in this. Obviously, in a B12, we will not go beyond the basic requirements of the state of Florida. They leave it to you to take at least one course in chemistry to know what and what Kelvin temperature means. You may already know those from a general chemistry in high school, though. That completes the 7 fundamental units. As a side note, to understand what an ampere is, you need to study magnetic fields. So you need both electrostatics and magnetic field study before you can understand what an ampere is. That was a good question. I'm afraid I took a lot of time. Are there any other questions pertaining to, hello? Hello?
Hello?
Oh, okay.
No, I just went off mute. Not bad.
No, I don't want to. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a question about the student info PDF. So where do we find that?
Go to the home page, and it's the first item in general information.
Okay.
It may also be a file because it's a PDF file. So another possible way of finding it is go down to File, click on that, and I believe the files are in alphabetical order. Some files have numbers, and that is from your text. So that means something from the text. Just try to find the student information page.
I found it. I got it. Thank you so much.
That's all right. Sometimes there's 2 ways of finding things in Canvas. Sometimes. Oh, any other questions? You're breaking up. Could you repeat that? I would hope to have it before the weekend, but take your time. Let me remind you that I believe it's, let me check my calendar. The withdrawal deadline to get your money back will be June the 2nd, which is this coming Tuesday. And if you really feel after looking over the information that you cannot get things in time, I seriously recommend that you withdraw from the course. We find it, especially on online classes, if you don't keep up, do not procrastinate. The best thing to do is move on and then come back and get the work done, turn it in late, and you'll find that what I mentioned, late work will not be received, late work will not be graded, but if you send it and ask for feedback, I will give you feedback as if you had turned it on time, but you will not receive a score. I think well, I don't expect to get it back except if once you have addressed the difficulty you had and would like to resubmit it for further review, but I won't regrade it. Now, that sounds harsh, but you can keep doing that back and forth and just, spinning your wheels on something that's not that important. The feedback should be complete, plus you have all the answers to see how the feedback would get to that answer. Let me remind you, folks, you don't have to be perfect to make an A. This course is so challenging, and we do not give pluses and minuses at FSCJ. Ladies and gentlemen, when you take a course from me and you complete it with a passing grade, you will be competitive to anyone at UNF and certainly at the University of Florida. I have students that send me emails and say, "Thank you, Mrs. Dubé, for your homework," or "Thank you for the test or thinking, make sure I get my homework done every weekend. Notice that most homework you have an entire week to complete. Homework for a Tuesday's lesson is almost always due, or Thursday's lesson always due on a Tuesday, which means if you work during the weekend, you can work during the week on it. If you work during the week, you have the weekend to work on it. I have used that routine for decades, and students thank me because most students are working at something or have other courses they have to work on. I think you might see the point then. Now, I think number 4, or somebody had a question. Hello? Oh, thank you. Okay. I'm trying to think of other questions that students have asked, but I try to have, since it's online, every possibility somewhere embedded in the home page. And having started with the hybrid in 1990s, when I was department chair of the natural sciences there at South Campus, I had a lot of office hours where I could just show up everything that I learned from online learning. I wish I could at least meet you a couple of hours a week face-to-face, but I am an older generation lady, and I am best if I'm quarantined, let me put it like that. Okay. Unfortunately, you were breaking up, so if you could try to repeat that, please. Go to the home page, and after grade determination and how to turn in work to me electronically, you'll find, I think, after physics resources, you'll find answers to all of the even number problems that I have ever assigned in the 9th and 10th edition. It's color coordinated. And to my knowledge, every homework problem that I assigned online, I have assigned before, and you can find its answer. And it's on the home page under general information. Not a problem. That's the purpose of today's conference. And we're doing beautifully. Once I had my son's phone. I don't know what's wrong with mine. Oh, yes. And believe it or not, there are still 20 people. I haven't turned off very many people. I appreciate that.
Oh, sorry. You probably already answered this, but how exactly are we submitting this the student's general information form again? Is it texting or emailing you?
You may attach it to an email, or you may text it to my home phone number as a PDF file or as a photo. Actually, this is really a test to how we can get materials like that transmitted to me. So if I don't respond that I got it, we might want to work on a way to make sure that the two of us can send things between one another by attachment or text. Please understand that. And ladies and gentlemen, please make sure that you identify that it's your information page. But other than that, if you feel as if you cannot complete it thoroughly, please leave out anything that you wish to. It's only meant to give me some idea of who you are and what we're doing in the course. And I keep all of those sheets of paper on file. I have it under lock and key for the close to 35 years I've taught at FSCJ. When I have a student that requests a letter of recommendation, I go through my files. I update it based on the current information. And to my knowledge, every letter of recommendation that I have written for a position or a job or a scholarship, the student has returned that they received the job, the scholarship, or the entrance into master's program. So I write them as individuals in case two students are applying for something. The letters are uniquely different. And there was a professor at University of Florida years ago sent me an email and said, I was interviewing two students of yours, and I want to compliment you on the fact that their letters of recommendation were not written the same. That's why I use that. That's how I use this page. Thank you for asking. Next question.
Yes, I actually do have a question. So I'm on Canvas looking around, and I'm trying to figure out where do we get the number of problems we're supposed to do for each chapter?
All right, have you gone into the calendar and find the 28th, I think, mentions, well, actually the 26th mentions chapter 1, says there's not much to chapter 1. It's kind of reading and then unit conversion. And click on that calendar's entry, and a screen will come up that will talk about attendance required. And I believe everybody attended because I had 24 on the roll and 24 were users today. For those of you that are left, thank you. The screen will tell you the activities of the day. It will give you, and I think chapter 1 was one of them, then it will give you chapter 1's homework. Then I'll say due, and it's usually due on a Tuesday, so that'll probably be June 2nd. Although that homework is so easy, you can submit it early. It can be submitted on the 28th. It's not worth a whole lot. It was, again, also decided to see if we can communicate that homework to me, because I know that there's more than the point needed to get 100% on homework. The 130 points is a maximum. So I know that here at the beginning, if we cannot get it communicated, it's not going to affect you. I hope that's reassuring. Okay?
Okay, I understand. And I do have one more question, if you don't mind answering. Actually, you know what? Never mind. I just forgot it. Thank you.
I like that answer. Okay. Okay. Any more questions?
How do I find the homework assignments?
Okay. Okay. Go to the calendar. Click on the calendar item for today. Click on any calendar date. Your calendar has been completed all the way to the last day. When you click on that date, a screen will pop up that will give the details of the conference for the day. It usually says attendance required. It usually says quiz. Of course, today's conference doesn't have a quiz. It talks about the topic of the conference. Today's was the course introduction, of course. Then if we've covered any chapters, we'll have chapter 1's homework, and I will list the problems. I believe there's 6 for chapter 1. And then it will say the due date, which is usually the following Tuesday. But I think chapter 1, I think, was due on Thursday to see if we can get the communication of the problems. I don't know if you found it yet while I was talking.
I'm still looking.
All right, go to the calendar. Should be in the far left.
How do I find or show only the calendar for this class? I found that before.
What you want to do is in the far left-hand corner, it should say calendar. That's the calendar of the course that you're in. Click on that. I don't have student view in front of me, but as I recall, it obviously you have to get out of conference.
Okay.
Yeah, get out of conference.
I found it. You gotta go into the course on Canvas, and at the top right of home, it says View Course Calendar.
Bingo. You got. I knew it was somewhere on the left hand. I didn't know if it was the top, but thank you. I just learned something too. Yes.
Oh,
That would.
problems
That
3,
would.
9, 11, 20, 32, and 36.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yes.
All right. Thank you. Found it.
You're welcome. Yeah. Okay.
So many professors just leave the calendar blank, and it'd be so nice to just have one page where I know I can just find all my junk at, you know?
I'm not quite sure that I understand. Can you elaborate?
It is just kind of annoying. I mean, this is irrelevant to the class, but as a student, it's been kind of annoying, like trying to find different pages over here, and I go to this website for homework, and I got to go over here and get this certain file viewer to download this video player so I could see the document, the type that they recorded their stuff in. It's just it's so nice to just see everything in one page to sort by class, you know?
I don't have any videos. You don't have to worry about that. Because this course really is 2 courses in one, I have to count the size. And they won't give me 2 courses. They started by giving me 2 courses so that I could download a lot more. I'm not sure that I'll work on videos because we have to send them to the cloud, so they won't be counted as part of the course size.
I'm implying that you need videos. I'm sorry. No, I was just bitching.
Pardon?
I said I wasn't implying that you need videos.
I'm sorry, but I think you're breaking up.
Yes, ma'am. I just wanted to tell you that I was not trying to imply that you need videos in any way.
Oh, okay. No, what you may want to do is you may want to send me an email about your concerns and see if I can address them or find out a reason why we can't. And I don't know if you were online when I mentioned that although it would be nice if we could record every one of our conferences, prior to the course there was a discussion about internet traffic, and it appears that they will not be recording any of our conferences. They said we can try, we can press the record button, but they do not guarantee that any recording will last longer than 60 minutes. Since we're not recording this, I just stayed on, but if this is the way they're going to handle things, during conference days I may have the first hour or 50 minutes, and then we go off on a break for 10 minutes, and then I start another conference at 60 minutes, trying to get them all recorded. Once we start talking about content and problem solving, that would be nice if we could record it. I have a conference tomorrow with respect to the introductory conferences we've all made in the B12, and I'll address that issue. I would hope that we could record, but it depends on what the college is willing to support. Or particularly support the science is another way of saying the same thing.
How exactly are the quizzes going to be? I see it on the calendar that it says that there's a chapter.
To the left, you should have a column, and one of the modules is quizzes. Click on quizzes, and it might show you that it's not available yet. It will be open at.
Okay, I see.
That's all right. That's what we're having the conference today for. Yep.
Okay, Professor, I just remembered my question. So,
okay, that's fine.
Okay, I'm on Canvas again. And so to do homework and different things like studying things like that, would you prefer us to read the chapter 1 like PowerPoint, like read the lecture and read the textbook as well?
Yes. best thing to do is read the textbook for quiz purposes.
Mm-hmm.
You'll become familiar with the examples in your text, and the examples in your text will help you with the homework. Then if you have some additional problem, you may want to go back and recall what we did during conference, or go look at my PowerPoint, because I will zero in on problems that I have of interest that will be assigned for homework or on my test, that kind of thing. If you want another resource, go into the text PowerPoint. And they got a lot of fluff in there. I think one PowerPoint presentation is like 50 frames. I try to tell you the sections in the book that I'm interested in, so that if there are, say, 11 sections and I'm only going to test over the first 9, I'll say like chapter 5.1 through 0.9, so forget the rest of the chapter, because the text PowerPoints will go through all of that, and you don't need to go through every one of the text's PowerPoints. I mean, they're covering everything, and some of the stuff is not required by the state of Florida. The state of Florida says the course is designed for physics majors, engineers, and maybe medical students. And some of that stuff is not part of what the state of Florida requires in this course. And that's what ultimately dictates what our coverage will be.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm trying to get an MD for clinical genetics, a PhD in biophysics, and at least a master's, or about probably another PhD in computer science, to be honest, before I actually quit school. So yeah,
Yeah.
if possible, because I'm trying to initiate like gene clinics where you can go in and actually find the problems that have built up over generations in your genes and get them.
Yeah, you're breaking up. What do you anticipate will be your BS major? Bachelor's of Science?
Dual major in biomedical and computer science.
Okay. Since you're not going to get a master's degree in physics, this course is designed to downplay the proofs of equations. So I would suggest you concentrate on application. Your book is world famous for the examples that apply to application. So you've got the right book. You may also want to go through your book and look at the icons they put in for problems that are related to biology. And if I didn't assign one of those problems, you may want to work it anyway. Even though it may be even and you don't have the answer, you can always send it to me and I'll work it or find the answer and feed it back to you if you like.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Oh, yes. Okay. John Hartman has reviewed, reminded me that the homework from Chapter 1 will be due this Thursday, which is unusual, but that is a trial run to see if you can get it to me, folks. Could I give you a suggestion? If you have limited time, would everyone do problem 11 at least and try to get it to me?
Right now?
Yes. If you have limited time in doing homework for the Chapter 1 homework, which is due rarely, but it's due Thursday, just try to do problem 11, and let's see how well it gets to me. So it's a trial run. I hope everybody heard that. Although I've lost 5 people. Yes, I've lost 5 people already, but they'll see what's required. They might get back with me about it.
Oh yeah, I mean, how do you want me to turn this in? You want to just type the answer?
Well, you can handwrite it. I prefer handwritten because I know it was you. Excuse me. And then you could take a picture of it. Excuse me again. All right, drink water. have it as a photo attachment into an email, or call my cell phone number, press text, and then send it to me by a PDF photo file. Students in the past have done that. It is possible because my phone will zoom in on it and I can read it enough to evaluate it.
You said you
And I'm
want
looking.
the answer?
I don't want the answer. I'm giving you the answers. I want your method for finding the answer. Giving me the answer back with no work is worth nothing. Because I've provided them.
Do you have a class after?
Pardon? Pardon?
Never mind.
You're cutting off. Send me an email. Send an email. Yes. There you go. Oh, yes. Okay, any more questions?
I'm about to send you a picture via text message of
Good.
that, so give me a moment.
Okay.
All right, it says on my end that it's sent. I also sent you a picture of the general information as well.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. I think
Sorry,
my
you-
phone. I
You
think my
want us
phone.
to send a picture of problem 11 today? Is that what you're saying? I think I was cutting off.
Well, if you have your student information, that would be good, but you could wait 2 days before turning in the homework Thursday. It doesn't have to be done today.
Oh, okay. I thought you were saying to do it beforehand so you know it works or something. But, all right, gotcha.
Yeah, the calendar will tell you when it's due, okay? Very good.
Understood.
Yeah, it's due by midnight, too, on the due date. Okay. Any more questions?
Were you able to get the text that I sent you?
All right, give me a minute. Several. I have 8 text messages, but let me get my phone up. Whoops. Come on. Copy text up there. All right, I've got 10 text messages, so I think I'm getting everybody's. I've got Wiley's was the last one sent, but let me go back and see if I've got others. Cause come on, give me my little phone.
Professor, what would you say your preferred email is?
You want my FSCJ? It is in the general information page.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dot
You
Dewberry.
want the yes? Go ahead.
Is it C. Dot Dewberry?
At fscj.edu. Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, here we go. All right, let's see the last one here. All right, now, Wiley, I've got a message. David, Melissa. All right, I got a phone number here, but not a name. Let me see if that's one of the students. Come on. Come on. Oh no, that was from a student actually last semester. I'm writing him a letter of recommendation, so he had a thank you note in there. All right, here's another multimedia. Okay. I do have the student general information page from Ashley. Okay, here we go. Whoops. Okay. Okay. Here we go. Okay. I got a message from John Hartman. That's good. And let's see, David. Yes. Well, you've got to log in at 1 o'clock on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Immediately, you can go to quizzes and take the quiz. It will close at 1:30. And go to quizzes. There's a module that says quizzes. And you should see one quiz there that says it does not open yet. Or it is not open. Yeah. Come 1 p.m. Thursday, it will automatically open. Even if I'm not logged on, it has a timer. And right now, the stop time is 1:15. I'm going to change it to 1:30 with all the difficulties we're having communicating. I want to give you plenty of time to be able to get into the quiz because of the importance of all the quizzes are important except for this first one, which is a trial run as to how we can get it done. Does that help? Was this Adam? Okay.
Professor, I emailed you. Do you receive it?
Okay, give me a minute. Yes, here we go. All right, was it my Gmail or a text message?
It was your FSCJ email, ma'am.
Okay, I have to get out of Canvas to get to my email, so I'll be doing that after we get off of Canvas. Usually I can go straight to it and come back to Canvas, but I'm afraid to leave Canvas because I see your questions that you printed out. I hope you understand. In fact, once I get into my emails, I'll respond, I received, probably, certainly by noon tomorrow. If I did not have a class at 5:30, I would do it today. Is that okay?
Professor, I remember you talking about the labs, saying that each one would be worth 10 points each. But
Yeah.
how are we getting the labs?
Down at the bottom of the home page, you'll find a guide to how you access the online labs. Way down at the bottom, I think it's the last thing entered last week, and it has OL, which is online, hyphen lab number 1, but it appears only after you're told to exit Canvas and in the toolbar, go to the Physics Avery, which is a collection of online physics labs that are similar to, actually, it will tell you the title of the one you're supposed to find. Click on the one that I've titled. For instance, the first one will be under the Physics Avery. The first one will be Measuring Acceleration with Photogate Timers. Then it will give you some direction. Sometimes they'll have...
I'm so sorry. So
yes.
I'm here in the course. How do I find the place for labs?
Go to the home page. The very bottom would be Online Lab Direction.
Oh.
Those, yeah. All 7 of the labs are related to labs that can be found that the university system in Florida furnishes ideas. And right now I'm coordinating those online labs with face-to-face labs. Haven't done it yet because it took me a while to find labs that were appropriate. But the first one, after you get into the Physics Aviary, the first one assigned is Measuring Acceleration with Photogate Timers. Then I believe the second one is Projectiles. The third is Newton's Law Lab with Photogate Timers. And in that one, you're supposed to click on the labs. Some of them will have how to do videos. Others will, to begin with, a little trial and error as to how you can change the variables. And some of them will even have labs that have parts to them. In fact, some of those online labs, I'll say, do parts 1 through 3 only, because the rest of it relates to face-to-face classroom interaction or group interaction, which we don't have.
Professor?
Yes.
This is kind of irrelevant. But
give it a try.
I've taken physics before, and one of the things I forgot to ask my professor was where he got the Photogate timers, because I thought they were pretty awesome. And more generally, I forgot to ask him if he knew where to get like a large variety of robotics parts, because I want to build drones and robots that help me out and stuff. And I don't really know where to get parts for that or how to custom make them. I know it's like cutting edge technology to 3D print metal, so.
You might try going online. At one time, when I was real active and stuff like that, there was a Lafayette Electronics somewhere on Beach Boulevard, I think. I don't even know if they're in business anymore. But sometimes, although I don't recommend Radio Shack, and I don't think they even are in the state of Florida anymore, but you may want to try going online to lab equipment can be ordered through Seagram and Welch Electronics. I can research that for you. I don't know any current electronic firms that I go to. That's a good idea. Because I've put together a few things in the past that I needed parts for.
Thank you.
I had to go to Lafayette, and if they couldn't find it, that was before the internet, though, they would find a way of getting it for me. I go to the internet with electronics parts.
Electronic Supply from Indiana.
Pardon?
Lafayette Electronic Supply from Indiana.
That's probably them, yes. They used to have an outlet here in Jacksonville. I have a lot of, if that's the same company, I have a lot of faith in them. I trust their product.
Cool. And it's Lafayette Electronic Supply or Lafayette Radio Electronics?
Oh my. Initially, I think they were radio electronics, but now they've expanded to all kinds. So
I'm sorry. I saw a link for radio electronics, but that link, they don't even exist anymore. So.
okay, that's the old. I think it's the same company, but it's now a supply company. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and you can send inquiries. If they don't have it, they probably can recommend how you can find it.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Glad I knew something there. Okay.
Oh, yeah. You have no idea how much you might have helped me and many other people.
Well, it sometimes pays to know an older person. I do know I don't think Radio Shack anymore has any. They may have internet supplies, but I don't have a lot of faith in the stuff they have. I just threw that out in case you wanted, if they still have something online. But I would stay with Lafayette Electronic Supplies. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Professor?
Yes.
Do you know of any educational physics games like Kerbal Space Program, but where you actually need to know like various laws and such to get off the planet?
Well, I've heard of them, but I don't know any specific way of accessing them. I'm trying to think if any of the physics faculty, and I don't think any of them are involved in it. At the onset of online and our online development, that is where all of our time is going right now. What they ultimately hope is once I get this online up and going, anybody could use it. And I tell you, yeah, sure, anybody could use it. I think I might be the only one that can use it, and I'm going to be permanently retired soon, so I'm getting up there in years. So,
what kind of project did you do that you went to Lafayette for?
Oh my. Let's see. First thing I did was modify a timer. I was putting Photogate. And Photogate timers that they use to time objects that pass through their photoelectric eye.
Oh,
you will find them.
A Photogate timer?
Well, I was making timers before Photogates that would turn on and off.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, one of my specialties at Florida was the use of RC circuits, which are switching devices. That we'll learn a little something about them if you stay into Physics 2 with me. They're talked about in Chapter 27. And while I was at the college, I guess back in the early 90s, we were competing in College Bowl, and we devised some timing mechanisms that I had also developed when I taught at Terry Parker High School, which required electronic parts. And I went through Lafayette and got timing devices. What we're trying to do is trying to get the response once you press the button to be in the thousandths of a second, because sometimes you win the buzzer by being faster than a hundredth of a second, just turning on the electronics. So, well, we did pretty good with it, and then I left it to work at the college. So, in fact, when I was at Terry Parker here in Jacksonville, I taught an advanced placement program. And for a half a year, I taught the same thing at Bowles. So I've had some experience with the local system. Did that help?
Apps are still available or available yet, if the testing center's back open. Because like all I need to take to get my associates is to test out. That's how it's been for like 2 semesters. And yeah, I really want to do that. do you know?
I didn't get the first part of your question. Can you repeat that?
I really need to know if testing centers are open or if anywhere is open so that I can take a CLEP and or a DSST so that I can finish my degree, because that's all I have left.
I got you. Well, I'll tell you, I've had trouble even finding out when they're open, because when the college closed, they disinfected the whole college, and they told professors if they had anything. I don't have I really don't have an office. I had the storeroom to the physics lab that I kept all of my files, and I went and got all the files that I needed, and then they disinfected and sealed almost all the rooms at the college. Now, last week I understand that the administration at South Campus, like Building A, the first floor only, was going to open to the administration. Well, I'm going to try to call them and see if I can talk to the assessment center and find out when their hours are or if they're opening at all. So I know your problem, but I need to talk to their director and see if there's any way we can arrange for at least, let's say, one test to be face-to-face. Not particularly.
I know I'm clean because I've been basically hibernating since beforehand. I mean, gosh, maybe I don't have any symptoms, you know, but I've been around old people that haven't died. So yeah, I would like very badly to do that, even if it was just like to go in and only like take it with like one person in the room or some stuff, like even online. I mean, I don't know why they don't do that anyway at all.
Well, I tell you, I think that they had to decide on the procedure, and I believe we have a faculty meeting that addresses that issue. I do know that they're talking about what they'll do is the test will be pristine, like copied through a copier. It will be kept sealed. The student will be given it. Then their answer pages will, I believe, be faxed to the faculty. That what they're doing is insulating the faculty from the student. You understand? Not information, but what they don't realize is we've got classes that are in science that are 24 full, and some of the other classes are 35. And so they want to restrict it to only those classes that need diagrams, illustrations, which are science, physics particularly. And so I want to get a hold of their officer, the director, and see if we can make some kind of arrangement. If we can't, then I've got a method for opening the test a little like I open the quiz, and then it closes a certain time. But I think I also mentioned that if that happens, you get more time for tests, because if we have the same problems signing in and off that we did today, you're going to need more time. The tests really are only designed to be about 2 hours long, each half, and we have 3 hours and 50 minutes. So I don't think the time's going to be the problem. The problem will be the communication. And if all else fails, like I mentioned, just take a picture with your phone and send it to my phone. There's a way of getting around things. Or call me, like I mentioned, and tell me what your answers to all the multiple choice test questions are. And if you're not, and I got the letter right, give me a word that the first letter is the letter of your answer. I don't know if you heard me say that previous, but it's communicating answers to tests that is a problem. And although I like a sit-down test on occasion, if it can be arranged safely. And I think if everybody's wearing a mask, They seem to think that if everybody, of course, does the sanitizing their hands, they sit down and take a test that's pulled out after collecting from duplicating, et cetera, then put it back in its plastic bag or whatever. Make sure everybody, I want to know, do they want the students to wear gloves? Because my students have to use protractors. I think you ought to be able to do the test without gloves. Use hand sanitizer to go in. They will have, hopefully, pencils that have been sanitized. We'll see. You never know. We don't know. Don't know. But we're going to certainly give it a try. My students last semester, I sent them by PDF file their test pages, and they took it by looking at the screen and put the letter of their answer near the problem number and used the word, say, apple for A. They said 1A and then apple to make sure we understood the letter. And then I told them after they submit their answer sheet, if they've got any work that they want me to see, if they had trouble with a problem and they want partial credit. And usually they had more than about 3 pages. One time they had 5 pages. And it works. And of course, I rely also on a little bit of a curve. I mentioned my limit is 10 points because the tests are 100, and that's going to change your letter grade. And it worked last semester. Let's hope it works this. Well, with a B12, this is graded. Oh, well. Let's talk about what else you need. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, we're down to 14. Any more questions?
So, how do I contact them? What exactly would I say? Just, just describe the exact specifications of what I need, or? Professor?
If you call the testing center or realistically any of the FSCJ numbers, they can transfer you to who you need to speak with, and then they can probably help direct you through these things. Given the circumstances, I was told that they will be opening up the testing center relatively soon, but they have to test things out first. You might not have known somebody who has already passed away. I have. I'm from up north, and even though it's up north, there's quite a few people on my list who have either gotten sick or who have passed away. So they really just don't want to risk it, especially because there's already been a confirmed faculty member and student from FSCJ South that has already contracted COVID.
Yeah, I understand that. And that's not what I was talking about. I was talking about the Lafayette Electronics thing. I don't know, like, if I would just ask them, because I see they've got a bunch of sources on here. And so I don't know if they would just be referencing to one of the suppliers and I'm just wasting their time, or if I just give them the exact specifications, like if they know a custom manufacturer or something. I don't know. Yeah. Did she leave? Yeah, no. Did the professor leave? What? Oh, yeah. Well, okay. Thank you.
Hello? Oh, they kicked me off again. Hello?
Hello?
Hey, Professor.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, well, since a student has mentioned it, yes, they did have a faculty member and a student that came down with it. That's why they have disinfected and closed the buildings, you might say. And I think that before anybody else goes in, they're going to disinfect it again. And all we're doing is, I believe the chat's supposed to be either Friday or Monday of next week about the administrative building at South, which is Building A, and maybe the assessment center are looking at ways and means to get open. That was what I was referring to earlier in the afternoon. And, you know, they're talking about some trial runs. It's just logistics at this point. But if we cannot do the assessment center, I have a method that we'll be using that is similar actually to your quizzes. So we've got at least something that's reflecting how it can work, assuming that we can get this quiz thing to work. It worked last semester, but when we finish the class out. So I have a little faith in that. Okay, are there any other questions? Okay. I think that's just about got it.
Thank you, Professor, for answering all of our questions that we have today.
Okay, and
Yeah, thank you, Professor.
yes, yes. Question?
Yes, ma'am.
No. Well, thank you, and sorry we couldn't see one another, but let me give those of you that are still with me a hint. When you go to the file, which is a PDF file, and it talks about the 707 or 727 that ran out of fuel, and the Mars lander, go all the way bottom of the page, and you'll see a picture of me that was taken 13 years ago when I had it taken for my passport.
Wait, where?
When you go into the home, and down at the bottom of the general information, you'll find is conversion, is unit conversion important? And read, of course, the two examples of units that were wrong, and then scroll all the way down to the end of the page, and you will find my passport picture from 13 years ago. And, you know, passport pictures are supposed to be pretty honest, but it makes me 13 years younger. That's a picture of me. And over half the class included a colored picture when they signed on to the course, so I know what about half the class looks like. Rather attractive people, actually.
That's not weird.
What happened?
I was just playing. I said that's not weird. It was a joke.
Hey, Professor, I wanted to ask, did you get my students' general information sheet? I had texted to you.
Well, I won't be going into my text or my emails until I go offline, and then I have another class tonight. Probably won't get to it until tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon, but once I get it, I will send you back a message that says received, so you know that I got it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Professor, I went onto their website and they have this contact us form and everything is white on white. I was able to submit it, but like, do they not want to be contacted or something? Do you think they've like
Interesting.
Maybe.
I don't have the student view, but I might want to go back into Canvas and see what you're talking about. And I'm not sure if it's tech support or administrative. Huh, interesting.
Lafayette Electronics, the contact us form.
Oh, in Lafayette? Don't know. I haven't been on the Lafayette international pages at all. I stopped doing my electronic stuff, oh my gosh, 15 years ago. So I would not be in the know of the current internet arrangement.
All right.
But they may have a phone contact, but of course, I did dealings with them before internet, which meant the local outlet, if there is such an outlet anymore, would help make contact with me. Are there any more questions?
I think I'm good.
Okay. I'm down to 10 people now. Those of you that are left, do I have any more questions, ladies and gentlemen? Okay. I'll wait until the last. However, since I have a class at 5:30, I probably go off at 4:20. So either that or if I'm the only one left, and then I will close it. But for those of you that are left, if you can still hear me, I'll be here. If you want to work through the course outline and want to ask any questions, just holler out, because I'm here.
I have a question in regards to the homework, if that's okay.
Whoops. You're cutting off and it's starting to rain again. Could you repeat what you said?
Yes, ma'am. I have a question in regards to one of the homework questions, if that's okay.
Yeah, run it by me. See if I remember it.
Question 9, let me pull up the exact wording of the question. It states, which of the following equations are dimensionally correct? And then it has A.
Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. It has A, okay.
A equals VF equals VI plus AX. And then it also has Y equals 2 meters cosine KX, where K equals 2 meters minus to the negative first power.
What problem was that?
Question 9.
Question 9. Okay, what was your question about it?
I'm just curious where to start with this. I'm trying to flip through the pages and figure out where I can get this information.
Okay, do you have your textbook?
I have the photos of the textbook. My textbook's
Okay,
being made.
you're the one. Yeah, okay, so you haven't had a chance to look through it. Well, from your previous experience in physics, I hope, you recognize V as being velocity, or if you want to talk, yeah, and you'll know the units of velocity, and you'll know the units of A. The small letter A is as acceleration. X or Y or S or D are all linear measurements, like a meter. However, the way they present it in your text, they call that a capital L. All right. What you want to do is then recognize the L and the T, T representing time, that's represented by velocity, and how acceleration is represented by using L's and T's. If you want to, you can just say L equals a meter and T equals a second. And then because you're not dealing with coefficients, you could even say 5 seconds. And then express each one of those physics terms in terms of a unit that's a meter or a second. And that might make a little more sense to you.
Okay, I'll work on it.
The reason I assigned this problem is the same reason why the importance of unit conversion was another assignment there. And it shows you how a book might have a slightly different way of getting the point across. I will assure you I do not like this method. I like the method that I present in my PowerPoint that's associated with Chapter 1. Okay, and how about 2? Which is y equals 2 meters times the cosine of the argument is kx.
Mm-hmm.
And let me remind you that kx must have units of either degree, obviously it doesn't, or radians. X would be a length, and k would be in, say, radian divided by a length. And indeed, that's what that represents when we study circular motion, simple harmonic motion, the pendulum. This equation represents the sinusoidal function of harmonic motion. You might be familiar with that from a previous physics class.
I took general physics, but I'm going to be honest with you. I got a 93 or 94 in the class, but I do not feel confident in anything that I actually learned in the class, which is why I wanted to take this class.
Oh no, at least you have a background. That's the main thing. The main thing with having physics before is you know the terminology, symbolism, and you said you knew what V is and A is. That was very encouraging. And the reason I...
Mastery-based learning.
Pardon?
We need access to mastery-based learning, where you just learn until you know everything and then move on.
Well, I tell you, I think the way I've got study material for you and the homework, that if you try to master those things and know how to use them as resources, you should be able to pass the course. If that's encouraging words, that's factual. I hope that helped. I should maybe talk to you a little bit about the reputation my students have when they go to the university system. My students are competitive with university level students. That ought to say something to you. I'm serious about students learning and not just attending or listening. I believe they're active participants. Thus, people ask me questions like problems number 9. That's actively participating. Whoever asked me to talk about it, I like that. Any other questions?
I do want to say thank you for what you had said in regards to question 9. It makes sense to me now. Thank you.
Well, just remember that since I don't like it, it's not, L and T is not going to be on my test. But I've got to keep, yeah.
Sure to represent converting it with meters per second and meters per second squared. Thank you for that.
That's it. But I've got to give you some background as to how other things may be presented. I don't have to like it. I just have to show you that there is another way of saying it. Once you get a chance to read Chapter 1, you realize they will identify L as any kind of link, whether or not it's X, Y, Z, D, F, and T for this homework set will be seconds. T to the -1 is really 1 over second. And it'll be it's a way of saying, here's what the symbolism means. When you get into a company, they may have different symbolisms. So this problem is saying just learn the new symbolism. Well, in this case, just be introduced to it because I'm not going to put L's and T's in my test.
And I appreciate that. I'd rather learn a bunch of different ways to attack a problem and figure out which way works best with me. Because that's something that I had an issue with last semester. For one of my exams, I had used a specific equation that's used in engineering colleges, and the professor didn't accept it as correct because I didn't use his equation that he wanted me to use.
Wow, I don't believe in professors having their own equations. First of all, once we get to Chapter 7 and 8, we're going to find that in classical Newtonian mechanics, there is 2 major conservation ways of doing every problem, and that is the conservation of
Total energy.
Energy and mass. We don't do the mass conversion because we're doing non-relativistic physics, but it's really mass energy, and conservation of momentum. Well, we don't even study momentum until Chapter 9. So we backtrack and call it Newton's second law in Chapter 5. But there is a restriction on those equations in Chapter 5, which I make very clear in my PowerPoint. The acceleration of a system must be constant in order to be able to use Newton's second law, which means when you get over and study momentum, if momentum does not contain a variable for acceleration, then if we study the momentum, not necessarily the force, because force acting through time is a change in momentum, then you don't have to worry about that restriction. I think that's what that professor was referring to. Well, I prefer to talk about the specifics and the limitations of problems as engineers need to know. And what that engineer firm did is they have an equation based on how they're going to apply it. And as long as the units agree, hopefully the constants agree, they probably had a viable equation. And I don't know who your professor is, but I'm old enough that I'd like to get a hold of them, and I will preach to them the value of student initiative. I'm sorry, I just went out on a tangent.
No, I appreciate it because my boyfriend was Holton Smith. You actually did a letter of recommendation for him to get into FSU.
Did he get in?
What was that?
Did he get into FSU?
Yes, he did. He had to withdraw temporarily because of like family circumstances, but he did get in, and he actually also into working at the National High Magnetic Field Laboratory also because of your recommendations.
I told you, if you were here, when I write letters of recommendation, sometime I send 2 or 3 to the same place, and every one of them is unique to the student, so they know then I'm not stretching the truth. I am talking about that student's abilities. Yeah. In fact, a professor at Florida 22 years ago told me that. And of course, that just inspired me to always be creative.
And it really did help. And it gave him the confidence to, your class gave him the confidence to help me last semester with my general physics class. And that, I believe, is the reason why I succeeded in the class. But I didn't learn from the professor. I learned more from him, from your strategies of teaching.
Oh my gosh, I'm glad to hear that. You know, I'm sorry I can't do face-to-face. I don't like online, but I did have the experience in the 1990s. And that's why the dean came to me and said, what can you do? We offer the course unless somebody's willing to teach it. And I said, I'm 76. I've been diabetic, having health issues. I have got to quarantine myself. She said, can you do it? And I thought I agreed to this class And the next day she said, oh, I meant both classes. So I have been super busy for the last 21 days. Both well fixed. Everything is in place. I just got to figure out how to get multiple choice test. Hopefully one on face-to-face. If not, oh boy, they may have to give me extra memory. But whatever they need, has said they'll help, because a lot of the students that are taking these online classes have got a time crunch for time to degree. And that was created by the state of Florida. Back in the 60s and 70s, engineering was a 5-year program. The state of Florida said, no, you will only have 4 years to get your degree, and you go to school at least 2 summers. Well, guess what?
That's one of the reasons why it was struggling for him over at FSU, because they're like, one class would be the equivalent to taking 3 normal classes worth of work.
You got it. And they're not doing us any favors. It is very difficult to include everything needed. I mean, I stripped down the homework, so I think it was manageable. I've done everything possible without compromising, encouraging students to learn and show initiative without intimidation. Your homework is critical. I don't like the WebAssigns. I have no idea how to help you think. Oh my. But I have the time. I don't go out of this house but to walk my dog in the backyard, around the pool and around the backyard and around the pool. And while I'm doing all of that, I'm thinking about what I can do for these classes. And I've been thinking about what I've got to grade next. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a stake in the ground and let the dog walk herself while I'm grading papers in the backyard. Somehow I'll get it to work. What life. Okay. I got 7 left. Any more questions?
If I have any more questions, I'll either text or email you. Thank you so much again, Ms. Dewberry. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome, and thank you for talking with me. I appreciate that too. It encourages me.
Absolutely. You're a very sweet person, and you've helped out so many people along your way, so thank you. And I hope you have a great afternoon.
Thank you very much. And I hope to see you on the conference Thursday.
Yes, ma'am. Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, I've got 5 left now. Anybody have any questions?
No.
I have on the list of users only a number for one person. I'm a little curious, although I know everybody ended, and the number is 727204. And then 4 X's. I think that's your FSCJ student number. I wonder if you could identify yourself so I'd know your name.
That's actually you. Yeah, that's your
Oh,
phone.
that's me.
Your son's phone, I think. Yeah, because there's a lot of spoofing techniques and SS7 attacks available today, and basically, like, everything you text, call, or use on
Oh, that's exclusive to this conference, I'm pretty sure, because that's not what it's been in other conferences. So that was interesting. Thank you for the feedback.
Yeah, no, it's fucking nuts. Excuse my language, but I know people that have these servers set up where they can just register your phone number on their server and watch everything that goes through your phone. Like, because they designate their servers like the home server. Like, that's how the rest of the world knows to get to your phone, because the phone's registered on that server.
Yes, and I think when the faculty has an office, it's their office number, I think, or a number that's associated with the office. Since I don't have an office, this is an invented number. And that's not the number I have when I'm on a chat with other people, but it may be because I'm not directing the chat. But when faculty's on, we all have equal access. There's no presenter. Oh, well, that solves that anyway. Okay. Any more questions? Anybody want to say anything about their career goals?
Yeah, I've got such a heavy taking because all of that is like very involved in finding gene therapies, or like for example, the computer science is very important for inventing software and methodologies that will help you locate faulty genes amongst data of, like, one of the things I want to do is just analyze a lot of people and try and find, as well as their genetic makeup, and I want to find more of the links between diseases and genes, and there's a lot already there, but
Yeah.
not enough for the FDA apparently.
Well, you probably have to get permission of individuals. You know, Americans, you don't access private information unless you have their permission. And in the state of Florida, you can't even record them unless you tell them that you're recording a conversation or you're copying their emails, because it's illegal in Florida. But I understand. Yeah, I understand. My husband went into computers with credentials, so you can believe. Back when you didn't have any degrees in computer science, so you went to the IBM in Roseland in New Jersey, and you're trained by IBM to code and software, particularly with respect to investment firms. And
back then, huh?
Pardon?
It was just like a trade skill, like construction or bricklaying. Like, you just go and learn from the people that do it. That's the only school there is.
Well, yes, but since each company has its own little secrets and ways of doing things, once he gets back, he was a system analyst. He would tailor what he learned to what the company credential needed. And then at that time, they didn't have to worry about people locking into the system, but IBM had various looks and safe gaps so that people couldn't go from, at the time they didn't have YouTube and all that. They only had a bulletin board, and didn't have any way of really going to someone else's account. That came later. But computer science is extremely important field because you're dealing with software that regulates people's careers, their medical history, actually anything that's mathematical, chance, insurance, actuarial studies, you name it. Very important.
And I want to clarify that the recording of these text messages that I was talking about, it is a gray area because some of them are locally implemented, and it is like their software and hardware and everything. And some people would argue that you have the right on your property to do whatever you like, given that the people are told about it, at least, that they can't rightfully from doing that.
Yeah, I know.
And it is a phone that they chose to buy that's being abused.
Yeah, I also know that as a teaching professional, that people have to ask permission to video or audio tape me, and I tell them at the beginning, you can audio and videotape me all you want. When you're dealing with science, we need to do it right. I'm not teaching you falsehoods or shortcuts, because in engineering, shortcuts can necessarily collapse the bridge. We have to teach the facts the way they are, and if I'm not, somebody videotapes me, then we need to get it changed. So I give everybody permission. Sometime I'll have audio taping done. I don't mind any session that I have with a student, either through phone message. I do know that as an employee of FSCJ, any of my emails going through FSCJ is public domain. I'm paid by the state of Florida. Any message that I send out at FSCJ, anyone has the right to look at it. If you were to query, my name, you will find thousands of pages of saved email addresses associating with my career as a public employee. Interesting. I didn't know I was that popular, to be frank with you.
Professor, I want to know more about how physics is played out, like at the molecular level. Is there anywhere I mean, I know I'm just going to find this down my education eventually, but is there anywhere I can go to get like some advanced knowledge on this?
I don't really know what you're asking, other than you might say, how is the physics that you're learning now applied to real life? The best thing I can do at this level is to direct you to some of the examples in your text, which is more of an engineering-based physics than it is a physics for physics majors, as you'll see by the examples in the book, in your textbook, 10th edition. I have sat into the Introduction to Engineering course that both we offer and UNF and Florida offers, to kind of show engineering students how what you're supposed to be learning is applied to the real world. And at FSCJ, Dr. Denijub invites licensed and certified engineers to come and talk to the class, and I usually sit in the back of the class. And you'd be surprised how one student asked, well, how important is homework in my physics class? And he said, I think all of you in here are taking physics calculus. Good. The analytical thinking needed in that homework is needed on the job. If you don't like doing homework, I believe he was from W.W. Gay and he was a mechanical engineer. He said, if you don't like doing homework at this early stage in your learning, where you know what the answers are, you are not going to enjoy engineering, where the problems you've got to solve, you don't know the answers. And I thought, straight from the mouth of a certified engineer, he'd been with W.W. Gay for about 12 years. It's a matter of discipline, and do I really want to spend life doing this? Have I learned to go from just basic knowledge, fitting things into equations, to how can I use those concepts and topics to build a bridge that nobody's ever built before? Every bridge is new. To renovate a railroad trestle. I've had a student that went to University of Illinois, and all she wanted to do is, how can you decide when a bridge needs to be remediated or renovated or just plain blown up and start all over again? In fact, she was co-author of a book about 6 years ago. She had learned how to bridge the information she knows to how you can apply it to real life situations. And, you know, I wish I had a book that could tell you all the real life situations you need to solve. But it requires initiative of thinking. It requires dedication to your field. In actuality, in that same university, in that same course, Introduction to Engineering, we had a marine engineer, like maritime boats and stuff, he was in the military, and he said it was the Army engineers that had to figure out how to build a hangar for helicopters so that we wouldn't have to dismantle the blades, because you use lasers to help establish that the blades have been put in correctly. If they're not, the rotation could tear the helicopter apart. And we'll study a little of that energy in chapters 10 and 11. You'll never guess what inspired those engineers to build the hangar. And indeed, he was watching a program considering how they're going to rebuild Notre Dame and the flying buttresses that they used to hold up the building. They used that idea to do the same thing for the helicopter hangar, and it was a success, which means you can support a large roof without a lot of lintels and whatever to hold the roof up. And what book teaches you to do that? Well, we'll talk a little bit about torque and levers and statics. In fact, we'll study chapter 12, which is statics, which means everything staying at rest. I hope that helped you a little bit.
I had a question.
Yes?
I'm a civil engineer major. What does physics really have to do with that?
Oh, my dear, you need to read chapter 12.
Okay.
I just talked about the flying buttresses of Notre Dame.
Right.
You don't, oh boy, you don't know. Trust me, if you're required to take a physics course, it will cover a lot of topics, and statics will be a course that you have to take and pass with either an A or B. So you better learn from the simplistic examples in the text, and then you'll be jumped into a course. In fact, the way I cover statics in chapter 12 will cover about the first 2 or 3 chapters in your statics book. But then you have another 9 chapters studying statics and how you build things. So this is just the first course of many you'll be required to take. And believe me, they get harder as you go up the line.
Yes,
It's
ma'am.
not it's not as, oh yeah, there's no upper division course that will be easier than chapter 12 in your book, believe me.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, the gentleman question? Mechanical engineering. All right, let's start with chapter 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We can skip gravitation because you can manage that. Maybe a little bit about fluid if you are going to contain fluids in your mechanical device. And, mechanical, if it's going to withstand earthquakes, chapter 15 is extremely important, particularly sections 1 through 3. And let me tell you, it's only introductory. You will have many more classes. One of the first classes I took in graduate school for my master's in physics was analytical mechanics. The book only had 10 pages, 100 pages, about 10 of which had just one problem after another and very few designs, because you could design things differently for the same results. And that was one of the things the professor was looking at. The first assignment was everybody does it on their own. The second is you were in groups of 2. The third, you were in groups of 3. We had a small class, so the last batch of homeworks were usually 3 or 4. Do you have any idea why he did it that way? And that was in graduate school. First of all, what can you do by yourself? What can you do if you have 2 more people in feedback? How about a third person? You see what he was trying to get at?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We're just at the start here of your career. And if you think it's hard now, it gets harder as you go to your junior courses, your senior courses. And this professor in graduate school really woke us up when the first assignment was by yourself. And then we learned very quickly that in the real world, you're usually working in a group. Sometimes your company will bring in experts. Sometimes they'll bring in a director that doesn't know everybody, so there can't be favoritisms. Sometimes they'll bring in a senior engineer that has worked on the project and now it's going to be renovated. Of course, most of the engineers have to be certified by the end of their senior year. They take the licensing exam for engineering.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes students have to spend about 2 more tries at that before they get it. But they can be hired on the contingency that within a year or 6 months they'll pass the licensing exam or they cannot work as an engineer. Mm-hmm. After about 5 years, 3 to 5 years, you take your senior engineering exam to continue with your career, and that usually involves any new methods that have appeared in your field. If some kind of project failed around the globe, you may have to analyze why it failed and how it could be corrected if possible, and to get your qualifying exam so you can progress in your career. If you do not pass the senior engineering exam, your career as an engineer is pretty much over. You might work with the same company, but you'll probably be doing coordination between either builders and the engineers, or site control, safety maybe, something like that.
Whoa, so you can only take it once?
No, I think you can take it more.
Well,
Yeah.
oh no, you can. I think you can wait 3 months and take it. Then I think you have to wait 6 months and take it. They do not encourage, they don't encourage, I think, a third time. The engineer exam, every time it's offered, is a different exam. Now, there are books on how to prepare for your professional engineering exam. I think that's the end of your senior year. And they've got old tests and old things. In fact, I had a student that really didn't like all the homework I assigned and the problems on the test. They were too hard. He went and bought one of the books, and he found problems that were similar to what I put on test and I taught. And he said, Ms. Dubé, I want to apologize. That happened back in 1994, I think. I had a student that wanted to be an engineer. And he didn't like exams, but at least he knew to get the practicing engineer trial exam test. And he found that there is a section on ethics. There's a section on chemistry. He didn't know he had to take chemistry. Yes, chemistry depends on what kind of engineer you want to be. And he identified problems on that exam that was similar to what he had been taught in all of those classes. And he said, I identified all but a couple of problems, which I think were brand new, and they were just trying them out. You know, the standardized tests will put problems on there that they plan to use in the future just to see how many students will miss it. So that helped me learn that what I had learned at Florida and what I had learned in graduate school, I was trying to implement. Fairly successful.
Professor,
Of course, I'll never. Pardon?
I know the line can get blurry at higher levels between chemistry and physics. I want to make drugs and design chemicals. Is this more chemistry? I mean, I'm very concerned with longevity. That's why I'm devoting my life to. I want to increase longevity and hopefully spread the word, on good
Well,
ways to
let me give you. Well, let me give you some information. My master's thesis was on an explanation of the biorefringence of calcium carbonate. I was a theoretical physics major, or a mathematical physics major. I was a mathematical physicist major in graduate school. Some universities call that theoretical, a master's in theoretical physics. My thesis was the explanation of biorefringence of calcium carbonate using electrodynamics. In my did more books on chemistry than I did on physics and crystallography. That's how, as you get further up into physics and chemistry, the two tend to melt together. Physics is mostly energy. Chemistry is mostly mixture of compounds. Of course, some can be endothermic, exothermic. You know, if you've had chemistry, you know that's temperature, energy related. But you're right. As you get an upper division, you almost can't tell one from the other. Some of the symbolisms in chemistry, though, are different from physics.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you study the bio-intrusions of calcium carbonate?
Pardon?
You said you studied the bio-intrusions?
Well, what I did was, this was way back in 70, where they were looking for using some kind of X-rays or electromagnetic radiation to penetrate materials without hurting them to, let's say, kill cancer cells, for instance. Mm-hmm. Now, calcium carbonate is inorganic, but it is related to organic material. So this is way back in the start of bridging between inorganic and organic, I guess.
Right.
And I knew that if you, I took as my theoretical example the green light of a hydrogen laser, because it's easier to distinguish and pick up, because the yellow is a broadband, and there's a lot of reasons for that. And then I theoretically went through the calcium carbonate crystal at 3 angular orientations, at 90 degrees to the optical axis, at 60 degrees, and at 120, to look at what happens to the wavelengths, because frequency won't change, that's energy. Mm-hmm. Those 3 orientations, and to try to find out what is actually happening in at least crystalline material with respect to the absorption of energy and the retransmission. And I got some pretty positive results.
Why? What'd you find?
Well, green is a more distinct line, whereas all the other colors of the laser beam, other laser beams, tend to spread out more as they leave the source. Green, for some reason, is very narrow wavelengths, and that would mean a very narrow frequency. It was a good paper. A couple of people were interested in it. I started majoring in mathematics at Florida, although I changed it to physics and a minor in math.
No,
so I had
experiment.
Pardon?
What did you find in the experiment?
Oh, well, first of all, calcium carbonate has double refraction occurring, and that's one of the reasons why I picked it, because I knew something was interacting that changed the orientation of the electromagnetic wave, or the green light. And if I could find out what was causing that, then you can redirect, probably if it's organic related, and they think it was. That's one reason why I took on the task. An explanation of how it rotates deals with the fact that electromagnetic waves have both an electric component and a magnetic. Mm-hmm. And the magnetic component apparently is not affected by the calcium carbonate. But the electric vector, when you after absorbing it and you re-radiate it, it rotates. And so you get a different, and albeit a little bit dimmer, refraction. Yeah, refraction.
Wait,
and
you said it rotates when what happens?
When it's absorbed. Calcium carbonate, of course, being a solid, when you shine light on it, it absorbs the energy and will retransmit it. And since it's somewhat clear, if the Iceland spar is fairly pure, you can see through it, it will give you a clue as to, we found then that the magnetic vector wasn't affected. It was the electric vector that was being affected. Something similar to that happens in polarization when you have polarized sunglasses. So my research told me that maybe it had something to do with the electric vector, but let's see if we could find out. Theoretically, I never did any experimentation. But it's an interesting paper. My supervising professor, he was kind of tricky. He said, there's certain things you want to leave out of your paper so that when you present it, they'll probably ask you about it, and we'll have the answer for them. And the main thing was further research. Hopefully, finding a material that is more organic. For instance, obviously carbon, calcium because of the bone structure of the body. And one reason why we picked Iceland spars, you could see through it, so you could see what is actually happening as an end product of refraction. But
How did you see that?
pardon?
How did you see that?
You just look through the Iceland spar and rotate it, actually. If it's clear enough, you can see right through it, and you can see that it looks like two refraction. One kind of rotates around the other. It was interesting enough that somebody asked me if I wouldn't mind maybe taking some biology classes. Now, I have had botany, and I've had zoology at the University of Florida when I was much younger, like 19. And here I am in my 30s, and I said, I've got a family. I don't have time to go back and do all the biology, so I can do this, really, using biochemistry or something. And anyway, I always wanted to be a teacher. That's all I ever wanted to do was teach. So, and that's what I've done my entire life. So I'm not sorry about anything with regard to my career. Yes. Woo. Well, I do know that the engineering department, I think it's after the first semester that you get into the Department of Engineering you're interested in, maybe the end of your junior year, they try to pair you up with not necessarily a professor, but an engineering firm. And I'm sure you've heard that between your junior and senior year, you're in you go to a firm and you act as, I don't know what they call it. There's a word for you, but what they do is they show you the ropes, you might say, between your junior and senior year. And still, I think you can get credit for it. And then your senior year, the courses are pretty much outlined that way, project-oriented. I think almost every engineering department has a senior project. I know Florida does. And you work in a group. Sometimes your electrical engineers are working with your mechanical engineer students. And then at the end of your year, you present your work. I've been to a number of those meetings at Florida when I was active professor. I'm retired, obviously, now. And some of my former students were presenting their work. And then we talked afterwards, and they said it requires a lot of initiative, paying attention to what you're doing, and then this last project is allowing other engineering types to feed you information. And he said, the electronics I hadn't had since your class, but I remembered at least some basics. And how could you, fit it in what your project was based on? It's interesting. They will help you along. Any engineering department, probably the end of your first semester will start talking to you about deciding what you really want. Because the first couple of courses, like Introduction to Engineering, technical writing, ethics, maybe one course in whatever your field is. I know electrical engineering is AC/DC. Almost everybody has to take either thermodynamics, depending on your chosen engineering field. But after that first semester, then you have breakout courses that are unique to your chosen engineering, where you'll begin to, in fact, some firms sometimes comes and talks to the students at the end of their junior year. And would you come and join us as a intern, I think is the word to use. And a lot of those interns really go to work with a company that they intern with the whole year before. Does that help answer that? Yeah. You're not being left alone after that first semester, especially if you have some promise or initiatives that the professors have identified. They will give you guidance. You're welcome. Okay, anybody else? I'm down to 3, the 3 faithful. Ladies and gentlemen, we got 2 minutes left, and I've got to sign off and get some supper and save my voice for the class at 5:30. I have appreciated talking with all of you.
Me too.
I have. Yes?
Thank you. Me too.
Oh. Oh, yes. Well, thank you. You're welcome, and I'll talk with you Thursday then, after the quiz at 1 o'clock.
Have a good supper.
Okay, take care. Have a nice
All right, thank you. Bye-bye. Sign off.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Let's give it a breather. I don't know what happened to my phone, son. Plus, I had the conference. Oh, you're right. Do they know this is a private phone? Yeah.